They say a man comes to Alaska either to disappear or to be reborn. Me? I came here to disappear. My name is John Harris. I used to be a wildlife vet, had a nice house in Montana, a wife who made the world feel safe, and a daughter whose laughter could quiet any storm inside me. Then one night, everything I loved was taken from me in a fire. The sheriff called it an unfortunate accident. That's what they always say when they want you to stop asking questions. But I knew better, so I left. I turned my back on society, sold the remnants of my past life, and drove until the road stopped. Then I kept going. I built myself a cabin deep in the Alaskan wild. No phone, no internet, no neighbors. Just snow, pine trees, and the constant hush of a land too old to care about men and their tragedies. I wasn't trying to survive. I was just waiting to stop breathing. Short pause, scene changes to the storm. The winter was especially cruel that year. Temperatures dropped to 20 below. The wind screamed like it was trying to peel the soul from your skin. I spent most of my time chopping wood, hauling water, and trying not to think. You learn not to look in mirrors, not to talk out loud, not to hope. And then came the night everything changed. It started with the storm. Thick snow falling like ash, the wind howling between the trees. I'd gone out late to gather more firewood before it buried the world again. My breath curled in the air like smoke from a dying fire. I could barely see a foot in front of me. The headlamp on my beanie flickered, fighting the cold. That's when I saw them. Eyes, low to the ground, glowing faintly amber in the dark. Not the skittish glint of a deer, not the sharp stare of a wolf. These were calm, heavy, watching me. I froze. The snow muffled everything. My breath, my heartbeat, the whisper of danger curling up my spine. Slowly, I adjusted the beam of my light. That's when I saw it. A shape. Immense. Half covered in snow. A mound of fur and blood and muscle. Barely moving. A bear. Not just any bear. A grizzly. Big enough to crush a man with one swipe. His coat was matted, crusted with ice, and dark with blood near the shoulder. One leg was twisted beneath him in a way that made my stomach turn. He was dying. I should have turned back, should have let nature take its course. Rule number 1 in the wild: don't interfere with predators. Rule number 2, never bring death to your door. But I didn't move. He stared at me, not with aggression, not even with fear, just exhaustion, resignation, and something else. I don't know what made me step closer. Maybe it was instinct, maybe madness. Maybe I'd spent so long buried in grief that I needed to feel useful again, even if it killed me. I dropped my axe and crouched beside him. His breathing was shallow, each exhale leaving blood in the snow. I could see the entry wound now, a clean gunshot just below the shoulder blade. Poachers, maybe. Or worse, some trigger-happy tourist. God damn, I muttered. The bear blinked slowly, as if acknowledging the curse. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of him. I went back to the shed, dragged out the old wooden sled I used for hauling supplies. Every part of my body screamed against the cold and the weight, but somehow I managed to roll the bear onto it. It wasn't grace. It was desperation and pure muscle memory from years of working with injured animals. The trek back to the cabin took nearly an hour, though it couldn't have been more than 200 yards. The snow was waist-high, the wind tried to shove me down. My boots froze stiff. I cursed every 10 steps. And still, I dragged him. By the time we reached the cabin, my arms were jelly and my lungs burned like fire. But I got him inside. I stoked the fire until it roared, threw down thick blankets, and began the only thing I still knew how to do. I tried to save him. The first night, I didn't sleep. I boiled water, cleaned the wound, stitched what I could. His pulse was weak. I couldn't tell if he was conscious, but I kept talking anyway. Maybe to him, maybe to myself. "You're lucky you didn't bleed out in the trees," I whispered. "Or maybe unlucky, considering where you ended up." He didn't flinch. I sat beside the fire, back against the wall, my rifle within reach but untouched. I watched the rise and fall of his chest. That was the night I gave him a name. Silas. Didn't mean to, it just slipped out of my mouth. The name of a dog I had when I was a kid, loyal, quiet, sad-eyed. I looked at him. "You don't look like a killer tonight, Silas, just another tired soul." And maybe, in some twisted way, I saw myself lying there, torn open, barely breathing, still holding on for a reason I didn't understand. That was the beginning. Of something I never could have imagined. Of a debt neither of us asked for, and a bond that would end in blood. The first night after I brought Silas in, I didn't sleep. The fire crackled low. The cabin walls creaked under the weight of the storm, and I sat there, watching the slow, painful rise and fall of his chest. He was a monster by any standard, big enough to tear me apart with one good swipe, and yet, lying there, he looked so small, so broken. I did what I could, boiled water, cleaned the wound, stitched the flesh together with the shaking fingers. He never growled, never bared his teeth. He just watched me, golden eyes flickering like dying embers, silent, patient, as if he already knew how this would end. Days bled into each other after that. Outside, the storm howled and raged. Inside, we survived, barely. I talked to him sometimes, small things, stories about the world I'd left behind, memories I hadn't said out loud in years. Maybe I was talking to myself. Maybe I needed to hear my own voice to remember I was still alive. But at night, the dreams came. Dark, heavy things. I saw my wife, my daughter, standing at the edge of a forest fire, flames roaring, their faces melting into ash. And in the center of it all, Silas, watching, silent, unmoving. Sometimes his fur was on fire, sometimes it was me burning. Either way, I always woke gasping for air, clawing at the darkness, searching for something that was never going to be there again. One afternoon, the storm finally broke. I went outside to chop wood, a simple thing, a routine thing. When I came back, the door was swinging open, snow curling in across the floor. Inside, Silas was on his side, chest heaving, eyes wide and wild, and standing over him, a stranger. Ragged clothes, wild beard, rifle gripped in trembling hands. I barely had time to shout before he swung the butt of the rifle across my jaw. White, hot pain, then blackness. I came to on the floor, the taste of blood thick in my mouth. The man was ransacking the cabin, kicking over chairs, smashing drawers, desperate for whatever he could steal. He didn't even see it coming. Silas had moved like a ghost. One moment he was down, the next he was a gray-brown blur. A roar, deep and primal, shook the cabin walls. The rifle clattered across the floor. The man didn't even get a chance to scream properly. One swipe, one terrible final moment. And then, silence. I lay there, stunned, staring up at the bear that had just saved my life. Blood dripped from Silas's claws. Steam rose off the mess soaking into the wooden floor. The fire crackled, throwing twisted shadows across the cabin walls. Silas stood there, not gloating, not angry, just breathing, alive. We stared at each other across the wreckage. Two creatures too broken to know what to do next. Outside, the snow began to fall again. software silent, like nothing had ever happened. The next morning, the cabin was eerily still. No body, no blood, no sign of the man Silas had killed. Only deep, heavy paw prints leading away into the snow. I stood there for a long time, staring at those tracks, feeling something shift inside me, something slow, ancient, and inevitable. Weeks passed. The worst of winter began to crack and melt. The air smelled different. Not warm, exactly, but full of a promise I didn't trust. Ice dripped from the eaves, pine needles poked through patches of slush. But deep in my gut, I knew. This wasn't over. Then one evening, following fresh tracks through the thinning snow, I found them. In a clearing choked with fog, Silas sat waiting. Massive. Still. Majestic in a way that made the world feel very old and very small. And at his feet, bound and gagged, face down in the snow, was Sheriff Briggs. I hadn't seen Briggs in years, didn't need to. His name was a brand I carried inside me. The man who called the fire that took my family an accident. The man who lied to my face with smoke still clinging to my clothes. Now he lay there, bloody, broken, shivering. A man who had no place left to run. Silas didn't move. He just sat, watching, waiting. His golden eyes flicked between me and the sheriff, as if asking a question I wasn't sure I could answer. What do you want? Justice, vengeance, forgiveness, or something else? I stood there, feeling the weight of everything I had lost, everything I had become. The gun at my hip felt heavy. The past felt heavier. I could end it, right here, right now. No court, no lies, no more empty apologies. But I didn't move. I just turned around, walked away, leaving the choice to Silas, leaving the past in the hands of something older and purer than human anger, leaving the blood where it belonged, in the snow. I never saw Briggs again. Spring came slow to the wilderness. The snow retreated in patches. The trees whispered with new life. Birdsong returned, tentative and thin, but brave. And then, one morning, I found it. On the porch of my cabin, where the last snow still clung to the wood, a single muddy paw print pressed deep into the melting slush, and beside it, a torn scrap of a sheriff's badge. No note, no sound, no roar of parting. Just that, a mark, a memory, a goodbye. Silas was gone, maybe forever, maybe just waiting somewhere deeper in the trees. Some debts aren't forgiven, some debts are simply paid. If this story touched you, or made you feel something deep inside, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed it, a like, a share, and a subscription would mean the world to me. There's more to come, more stories, more journeys into the wild places of the heart. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.